Hi, everyone. I hope you're all well, safe, and healthy. My name is Umara Daud. I'm an education USA advisor at the Islamabad office. I have a master's degree in international education policy from Columbia University. Thank you for joining us today. This is our second session of the Fulbright Journey for the year 2023. Today's session titled The Fulbright Journey is meant to tell the story of our Fulbright alumni to our audience. The intention behind this concept is to inspire and understand each unique journey and to highlight how this specific step brought meaningful change and progress in their own lives as well as in their communities. This year, we are choosing from our Fulbright cohort people who have done their degrees in unconventional fields. This is to encourage and diversify the applicant pool. The speaker will talk about their personal journey, academic experience at the university, and how it shaped their thinking, career, and life goals. Our speaker today is Ms. Aban Haq, who is a Fulbright alumni. She did her master's in development economics from the Center of Development Economics, Williams College. She currently works with the Alliance of Financial Inclusion. Also joining us today is Mr. Tom Powers, who is the current director of the Center of Development Economics at Williams College. He has decades of experience in admissions and recruitment of international students and has recruited many Fulbright students from all over the world, including Pakistan. We are delighted to have Tom, and it's great that he joined us, and he will also be sharing his experiences in working with Fulbright students and about studying economics and finance in the US. Before we start, a bit about who we are. USEFP is the Fulbright Commission in Pakistan. USEFP promotes mutual understanding between the people of Pakistan and the people of the United States through educational and cultural exchange. To learn more about our organization, programs, and facilities, you can check out our website, www.usefp.org. Also, before we start, I want to note that we will be taking questions at the end of the session. For your questions, please drop them in the Q&A box, and we will answer the questions at the end. Or Aban or Tom, whoever would like to take the questions, they will answer at the end. Okay, so Aban, before we talk about your Fulbright journey, we would like you to give us a bit of a short peek into your personal journey and background before you started your Fulbright journey.
Yeah, so thank you very much, first of all, Amara, and to USEFP for giving me this opportunity. I was a bit skeptical when you asked me whether I wanted to do this session because I was a Fulbright scholar many, many years ago, and I wasn't sure if my experiences would be relevant. So, but I'm happy to share and take an hour to talk about one of the most important and most interesting years of my life. So thank you for that opportunity. So just to share a little bit about myself, I grew up in Rawalpindi. I went to school there, college there as well. And then I did my master's in economics from Quaid-e-Azam University. And after that, I joined the State Bank of Pakistan, where it was kind of my first job, moved to Karachi for that. And that's where I was when I went on the Fulbright program and to Williams College.
Okay, so I think what my next question would be you were working at State Bank, and it's quite hardcore economics that is being engaged in that sensibility. So how did you decide this major? Why did you want to go? What motivated towards development economics?
Yeah, okay, before I talk about that, maybe I just want to take some time to also share how I heard about the Fulbright program, and that kind of connects to why I chose this major as well. Mm-hmm. So I think, I'm sure it's true for many people that there are some conversations or some people who can change the course of your life. Yeah, and you don't know that they're doing that, but that's what happens. So when I was in Quaid-e-Azam University, one of my teachers, professors, who was also a Fulbright scholar from Pakistan previously, who had gone to CDE at Williams College, she was teaching me development economics. So one day she just, said to me, look, I think you really have the potential to apply to this, scholarship program, and I think you would greatly benefit from it, and you should really give some serious thought to graduate studies abroad and in the US, for example, right? So I got very excited. And it was like, I mean, I had never even, maybe I had thought about it, but I never really thought it was something for me. So I went home super, enthusiastic. And the first person I talked to about this is my mother. And just to give you some background, my mother had been working in the United Nations for most of her life, right? And so this is coming from someone who's supported education, who's given us all kinds of, freedoms, access to opportunities. And I tell her, look, I think this is a great opportunity. She told me about this scholarship program. I want to go on this. And my mom's first reaction was, what? Now you will go and study? What about getting married? What is this? That was her reaction. And the reason I share this is because I think those are the kind of conversations many women, young girls in Pakistan will have to have when they want to apply to these programs, right? So that was my first shock in my Fulbright journey, right? How they didn't hit, that was my first hurdle. But anyways, I think it was a shock for her as well. She took some time to recover from that. I took some time to recover from that conversation. And at the same time, it was that time that I think it was through my professor that I got in touch with Tom, and we started talking about Williams. At that time, I don't think I had the applications for the Fulbright were open. We talked about it, and it looked like, an attractive program for me. I was interested in working in the public service and with the government. But obviously funding was a challenge, right? So how do you get the resources? So I think that's how my journey started. And by the time I actually applied to the program in 2004 for a placement in 2005, I had already, moved to Karachi, was in State Bank, and then, then things moved from there. So the decision to choose the major, I think, was influenced a lot by what I was studying previously. What I wanted to do, especially given Pakistan's economic context, I think it's pretty clear that, I mean, we have a lot of economic challenges, maybe even more now than we did 20 years ago. So it seemed like something which was very relevant. And also just the conversations that I had with Tom at CDE, it seemed like a program that felt right at that point. And so then I applied for the Fulbright program, and that's how the journey kicked off.
Okay, so that's very interesting. I think these journey sessions are coming out to be very interesting experiences for me as well, because the first Fulbright Journey speaker was a person, Abkas Idris, and his journey and his challenges were so different, and the aspects that you have just touched upon is so different, especially being a woman and especially being in developing context, and coming from your mother, who's such an educated and exposed person. I think this also gives confidence to a lot of women who have joined this session or who will be seeing this session, that they can have these conversations and actually win in these kind of conversations and go ahead and follow their dreams. So I would like to know, how was your academic journey at Williams, and did you have any goals set up for you? Did you wanted to explore certain areas, or were those goals achieved? What were the good parts, and what were the things that you felt were new for you, or things that you had to overcome and understand?
Yeah, I think if I think back to who I was, when I went on the Fulbright program, I think I probably had I had very simple expectations from this experience, right? I think something for a young person who's ambitious or who wants to contribute to society or make some meaningful contribution, whether it's through a career or something outside that. I think one of my simple objectives or goals was that I wanted to do or go through a program that would strengthen my profile in the job market. I think a lot of us in Pakistan, young students who are coming out of local schools, one of their primary objectives is to jumpstart their careers. And I think a degree from a leading school in the US clearly gives you that advantage. And I think that is a fair, kind of goal to have at that point. This is something and I think that was obviously something I wanted as well. I thought this would be something which would contribute to my professional growth, open up doors for me when I returned to Pakistan, because I was always clear that I did want to come back to Pakistan. So that was something, and even the choice of the subject was very much from that perspective, right? So I think that was one of my main goals. But I think at a more personal level, it was also to experience the academic atmosphere in the US, to be honest. We have fantastic schools in Pakistan, and there are very good universities as well. But we grew up watching movies, reading books, which portray the American culture, which portray the academic, life that is on campus. And I think at some level, I really wanted a taste of that as well. So I think that was more of a personal, maybe I didn't realize it at that time, but I think it was there for sure. In addition to kind of the professional ambitions that I had, right? And so I think I went with that that mindset. And I don't know how much young people travel today, but for me, it was my first solo trip to a foreign country, maybe even my first trip to a foreign country, right? Mm-hmm. And here I am going on my own. It's like a bit intimidating. And I can talk more about that a little bit on how I dealt with that and what happened. I have some interesting stories if we have time. But I think in terms of these goals that I'm talking about, I think they were really completely met especially through the Fulbright the combination of the Fulbright program and being at Williams College. I think in terms of the academic program, my own experience was that my academic background from Quaid-e-Azam University, it really prepared me well for this program. I didn't feel like I was ill-equipped or that there was a tremendous gap in, what I was expected to deliver academically compared to what I knew. But there was definitely a very significant, enhancement or upscaling of knowledge and skills. Some subjects more than others, right? So I think academically, in terms of content, I felt challenged sufficiently, but not so much that I would become, stressed or I would not be able to cope with that. I think one of the key experiences or something to think about when Pakistani students go on these programs, which was a really interesting thing for me, was the environment in the classroom and the relationship that you develop with your professors. So I don't think I had ever called any person older than myself by their first name in my life, right? And I could not imagine calling my professor by their first name. Like, no. No. So just imagine, like, I am in a classroom where professors are being, called by their first name, and they're really talking to you and treating you as adults, as people who are intelligent and have some meaningful contributions to make, and really connecting you almost you're there, equal, whereas they have years of experience and multitudes of knowledge and all that. So that was a real shock to my system, I would say, a pleasant shock. And I thought, okay, this world is a bit different from where I come from. So I think for students who are going there, it is an adjustment, and that was an adjustment I needed to make in terms of my academic kind of journey. But I think the other thing which I really, when I look back and, when you invited me for this session, I really thought back to that time. I had to jog my memory. What really, one of the other things I think is, it was a really wow experience for me in terms of the college environment and the resources that are available to students. I mean, almost any good university or college you'll go to in the US, prepare to be wowed by their libraries. I mean, you will be,
Absolutely.
it's just,
I totally agree.
It's mind-blowing when you see them for the first time, the way they're resourced and how students are expected to use those resources, right? More independently, and you are more empowered to use those resources. At Williams, especially, I remember there was this amazing new theater which had been built through, I think, some alumni funds and all. And it was surprising to me on our kind of the first, when you land as a new student, there's this day where all the clubs and all the, the different societies that are there, sports and arts and culture and all that, they have this open day. You kind of go around, they set up stalls so you can join and sign up for all these different kind of activities and clubs. And then at the end, there was this big event in the theater where some of the performing arts clubs did their bits, yeah. And there was no faculty there to control them, which was also shocking for me, that they have given this multi-million resource in the hands of the students. So I think that's a really, I think as a graduate student, you really feel the responsibility and the empowerment as a student. And that's, I think, can also be quite a wow factor for some. At least it was for me. Maybe not for the kids of today, but for me, some of these experiences were really unique and interesting, and they really shaped my understanding of relationships between faculty and students, the kind of how to be a real graduate student and what is expected from you. So maybe I stop there, and if you have anything, yeah.
Yeah, so you covered a lot of questions that come in between, like cultural or academic experience and all that. But I totally agree. I think my experience, I would just say I'll echo your experience. The libraries and the connection with the professors and the way you are dealt with is quite an interesting and very empowering experience. You don't really have to, assert that I am somebody. It's just that you're taken very seriously. So it's something that's very valuable, and I think it shapes you into a different person altogether. I would like to know if, so there are a few things that I would say, and then you can address them as you like. One more question that I'll ask you in the end is about Fulbright application. I think we should have addressed it before, but I'll just ask you in the end. But I want to know if while you were there was some at some point you needed help, or there were some ups and downs, how you dealt with it, and how the resources at the university also helped you as an international student to work with that. And also when you came back to Pakistan, how did you adjust? What were your goals? Was there an adjustment? Were the expectations different? Did you expect something else? And because the culture, the professional culture or academic culture is very different between the two countries. So how did that happen, and how did you take that?
Yeah, I think so. My program was a one-year program, and to be honest, I really thought hard about what were the downs or what were really challenging times, and I couldn't think of any. And that's not because there aren't challenges, but I think, at least in my experience, at CDE, at Williams, because the program is designed for international students. Most of them come with a little bit of work experience, some more, some less. The center is really, really good at kind of foreseeing what would be the needs of the students and making sure that they have mechanisms in place to help you along. And it's a small program, so I mean, there's the access to those resources is very very easy. So even if there are problems, they can foresee. And also in terms of needs, right? So one of the things, for example, when you go to a new country, it's a new culture, a new city, it helps if you know someone who can help you with some of the non-academic stuff, right? Someone who can maybe take you around for a meal or something. So I don't know if CD still does it, but at that time they had a host family program. So they would connect the international students, all of them, with a host family. And to me, that was one of the most enriching experiences of being there, because you know, and it's really up to the family and the student how much they want to benefit from that linkage and how they take it forward. But I mean, I benefited a lot. So for example, you know, especially during the holidays, it can be a bit depressing because you may not have family, you may not be able to travel home. So what do, right? Maybe the college has shut down, all students have gone home, and you're just, you know, only the international few students. So then this family, for example, they took me to New York with them for their Thanksgiving holiday. So I got to experience a side of American culture, experience a holiday with an American family. And at the same time, I was not sitting depressed in my room in the middle of, like, you know, a gloomy weather anyways. So I think in that sense, universities which have a constant inflow of international students, I think they are prepared to deal and help is available if you need. And I think one of the things we learn there is to ask for that help, you know, because and if you ask, there will be someone who will be able to help you. I don't want to portray it as if everything is hunky-dory and, you know, there'll be no issues, or you will not meet people who, you know, who may say things to you which you may be offended by. But by and large, my experience is that the universities themselves tend to be relatively safe spaces which encourage diversity and encourage, you know, different views to be shared. But yeah, I also had experiences. I would advise students to be prepared for. I hope that people still don't ask these questions after 20 years. But at that time, I can't remember the number of times I had to answer, do all Pakistani men have 4 wives? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I had to answer that question. How come I don't have to wear a scarf? Yeah, that was a common question. Why do I speak good English? How do I speak good English? So it's not that those questions, I hope students still don't get asked, but you might be. So it's not to say that everybody is very, you know, welcoming and everything will go smoothly. But if you have any issue, whether it's academic, whether it's, you know, related to your personal health or well-being, I think universities have put in a lot of mechanisms to support international students. So my suggestion would really be to seek those out. Find those out. And when you land, there are a lot, I mean, actually it can be a bit overwhelming, because when you land, a lot of information is thrown at you about these resources, about the opportunities on campus. And there's so much that it sometimes can be difficult to decide what you want to engage in. But it's there. And my suggestion is to always access those. In terms of your question on coming back to Pakistan, yeah, I think it was not difficult for me to come back to Pakistan because I was only away for 1 year as it was. So for me, it was not difficult to return and to settle back. Actually, when I came back, Yeah, actually, when I went for my Fulbright, I just want to say that between the time that I got the Fulbright scholarship and when I actually went in that year, I also got married. So my mom's wish came true, right? So anyways, so she got something and I got something. We both won. But anyway, so but because of my personal circumstances, I left the state bank and I moved back to Islamabad, my Pindi being my hometown. And I immediately, almost immediately started working with the Ministry of Finance as a consultant. And I think, you were asking about goals. And I think my being on the Fulbright and being at Williams, having studied development economics, I think it was a big factor in me being selected, despite my very limited experience and being a younger person at that time. So I started working. That is a whole different story on the shock that I got there and why I didn't continue to work. And I'm happy to talk about that if you want. But it was not difficult in terms of coming, settling back, finding a job that I was interested in. And the other thing I think, which I was also able to do, was to contribute a little bit back to the Fulbright work in Pakistan. So let me also just say that when I went, this program was not as big as it is today. It was much, much smaller. Not so many people knew about it. So I don't know whether it makes it more competitive or less competitive, I don't know. But it was a much smaller program and it was at a stage where they were starting to expand and grow the program. So when I came back, I also got the chance to, as an alumni, the Fulbright team invited me back to review applications for new applicants, also to sit on some interview panels. So it was really nice for me to kind of contribute in that way back. Yeah.
Great. Tom, would you like to add something here? I think regarding the university resources available to international students, and if there's something that you would like to say.
Sure. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Williams is a small school, about 2,000 students. So there are larger schools that have perhaps much more extensive resources in terms of things that are dedicated to just international students. But as Aban said, the program where she studied, and that's in the background of my view here, it's a specialized program just for international students. So we have roughly 30 students a year and a small staff and faculty who also teach elsewhere in the institution. But the faculty know every student by the second week. So small size is our advantage. And as Aban says, I think one can ask questions pretty readily.
Thank you, Tom. My next question would be connected to the first one. How important is the network, other networks and the connections that you made at William? Like Tom being here is an evidence that, those connections have stayed with you and they have grown over time. And but also how beneficial is this relationship and how beneficial it is professionally and academically for you?
Yeah, I think it's super, super important. And it's also like a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity. So not one to be taken lightly is what I would say. I think creating those relationships and networks has been something very personally also very rewarding, and professionally as well. So personally, for example, I was just telling you, Amara, before this session started, that recently on my work trips, I ran into two of my friends from CDE. We studied together, and it was such a delight to see them at these conferences and to pick up, go back in time with them and to meet each other in a completely different stage of our lives, where we have kids and we have, advanced in our careers. And so it's really rewarding in terms of the friendships that you can form. I think it's so Pakistan, unfortunately, is not a very what do you call it, international location, right? We don't get a lot of international tourists. We don't have a lot of universities where international students come. So it's probably going to be the first time, it was for the first time for me, for sure, where you will have the opportunity to meet people from all sorts of backgrounds, whether it's ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, countries, nationally, even like the worldviews that they have, the values that they have. So I think making a conscious effort to meet more people, to be open-minded, and to really to search for these opportunities to meet people. It will help us. It helped me grow as a person. I think I learned so many. I mean, it was really amazing. I can tell you so many things. So one of the interesting things, it's kind of embarrassing, but I'll tell you anyways. So I had one of my friends, the one who I also ran into last year, she was from Malawi. And one day I saw, the African women have a certain types of hairstyles, right? So one day she comes to class and she has an absolutely different hairstyle. So I said, what happened to your hair? Like, it was so different. And she said, so she had like these really straight hair and everything. And then she comes with these braids. So she said, those are extensions. African women don't have that kind of hair. And I said, no way, I could never tell. So it's like, it's a really insignificant kind of thing, but it really shows you how interesting life can be and how interesting these interactions can be. So firstly, I think it's really great. You can form really deep friendships. For me, it really broadened my worldview, and that can only happen if you talk to people with an open mind and where you really listen to others. And I think it's a really great opportunity to do that. At least at Williams, for me, it was really great because people from everywhere were there. And then also professionally, and not just with your students, fellow students. I think it's also important to build really good relationships with your professors, because that's also critical in your future, especially if you plan to go for a PhD or further academic studies. You will definitely need strong references, and that always helps if you have good relationships with your professors. And to me, the way to achieve that is to take your program seriously. Yeah, I think if you really want your professors to take you seriously now and in the future, you really need to commit to your program and prioritize that and take it seriously. And like I said, they kind of, because it's not a very top-down approach, so it's really going to be up to you how committed you are to your program. So if you want those relationships, academic relationships, to sustain, I think you need to try to do well and try to demonstrate commitment to your program. And I think that really helps you build those relationships with your professors. And that's definitely something you need to do.
Thank you, Aban. Tom, would you like to, I would like to ask you a question at this point. Would you like to talk a bit about the alumni network at Williams College and how can students utilize this network? I think the students would really like to know how this connection forms and how they can take them further.
Sure. Well, Williams, as I was saying, it's small and it's called college because the majority of degrees are at the bachelor's level. But at the master's level, we do have this specialized program. And it alone has about 1,200 living alumni in 100 countries. And we don't know exactly where everybody is, but we know where about 82% of the people are. So there's an alumni database. If you're traveling somewhere for a conference, you can look for people, or if it's a thematic conference, as most are. I mean, I didn't know that Aban would see these people, but I could have guessed about some of them just because I knew that the kind of work they were doing, and we follow that, and they often, for people in a particular field, stay in contact, especially closely with those professors who were teaching things relevant to them. So As I said before, our benefit is small size, but it means fairly close alumni contact. I guess the other thing we do that, and this is a little self-serving, but our alumni are our recruiters in 50 to 60 countries around the world. So we really rely. Williams is a very good school, but it's not a big name, and so word of mouth works better for us, and people believe it when they hear it from somebody directly, and then it's corroborated by things they see online. So alumni help us recruit every year, and we ask them to identify people whom they think could benefit from the training and whom they would like to hire later. So that sort of self-interest angle often helps focus their attention. I think Aban has referred a few people, one in particular I'm thinking of, who worked at the State Bank of Pakistan and now works at the IMF in Washington. And so alumni referrals are great and also keep us very close. Professionally, I do think that our professors are very motivated by hearing how people use what they teach. So if you're a professor who has been teaching a subject, you may have done some practical work experience in the IMF or World Bank, but you don't really see how that is playing out in countries around the world. And I think when professors hear from you about how the things you were taught work in real life, that's incredibly valuable. So they're responsive. And I will say that there are students who get to know professors well, and being very interested in the subjects makes a huge difference. We don't name a student of the decade, but Aban would have been a strong nominee. And we even did this. She was very helpful to other students when she was here. I think she had taught some before. And so there are a few of her classmates who benefited from her additional understanding. So after that, we created a position for teaching assistants, people who had studied here who would return for the first semester the next year and help people academically and in terms of just adjustment. And nobody can do that better than somebody who's just been through the program and succeeded. So they're also a nice bridge for connecting students to everyone on the faculty and throughout the institution.
Thank you, Tom. These are valuable information for our students who are aspiring to apply for Fulbright scholarship and thinking about going to institutions, amazing institutions like Williams College. Okay, so one question which is not in the sequence of what we are doing, it's amazing, but just to say, our students would like to know, how was your experience when you were applying for Fulbright scholarship? Like, what were you experiencing? How were you thinking about GRE? How were you thinking about your personal statement? And what came out to be? How was your experience while you were applying for Fulbright?
Yeah, I think the first thing to kind of mention here is that the application process does not start when you start filling the application. I think the application process starts when you hear about Fulbright the first time, and when you kind of decide that this is something that is maybe even that process is, whether this is something for you or not for you, because I think it's a fantastic program. It offers a generous stipend. It offers opportunities for cultural exchange. So while I was there, I attended, I think, a Fulbright cultural conference as well, where all the Fulbright from other countries also got together in Washington for a 2 to 3 day event, not just, from Pakistan. So I think it's but then there are, also a tough thing for some people. There's a bond, you have to come back to your country. And so there could be other, things as well. So first thing is to see whether this makes sense for you, and once you decide, then you're kind of the formal application starts. So for me, I think it started when it started because I was already interested to go to Williams and I needed the funding for it. So then Fulbright was a really attractive scholarship program. I also always intended to come back to Pakistan, so it made perfect sense for me. And I think I really have to think back to how I handled the application process. I think now there are much more resources available through the work that Amara, you all are doing. At that time, we didn't have any of these sessions or guidance counselors or any of those things. So, but I remember that the GRE was a requirement, and then obviously you also had to give your personal statement. You also had to provide your priority schools, like what were the programs that you would like to go to. I don't know if it's still the same, but it is. So that also is a process, right? Identifying the university and the programs that you want to go to. It takes a lot of time and research to really find out the appropriate program. So that's also part of the application process, really deciding. And programs have become more and more specialized over time. You see, now, even if you're interested in economics, there are like multiple programs with different dimensions of economics. So you really, I think it's a very difficult process to really pick the right program. And then you also want to, I think everybody may be aspiring to go to Ivy League, schools, but you really need to be realistic about your own profile and what you want to do. And so you want to vary your option. So I think for me also, that was what the process was. For me, obviously, because I was already interested in Williams, so it was an obvious first choice for me. And then I had a few others. So my personal statement also was very much about what I wanted to do in the development economics field, why I thought this was a relevant expertise for me to have, given my background from Pakistan. And I talked about obviously some of the things in terms of my aspirations. I think those were, I don't remember exactly, it was a very long time ago, but I think that was the context in which I wrote my personal statement. The GRE itself is a tough one, to be honest. I don't think I had a lot of time to prepare for it as well. But I would suggest that if people are serious about Fulbright and serious about getting into a good school, this is something they really need to take seriously and invest some time in it. I didn't take any classes or anything. I prepared for it from my own, whatever books and all are available. But yeah, it's an important step. It also, the result of that is also an indication, can help give you an indication of the kind of programs that you would be able to get into. So that's an important step as well. Yeah, so I remember submitting my application, and then I had one interview in Islamabad. I don't know if you do more now, but it was one interview. There were 4 or 5 people. It was maybe 15, 20 minutes. It was a very, even in terms of interviews, I think it was one of my first interviews I gave to anyone in my life. So, because the state bank recruitment process is very different, you don't get really interviewed, right? So it was really my first interview experience as well. But it was very, very friendly. I felt immediately comfortable. It was more conversational. And the questions were very much about why you want to go, what do you think, what's your motivation, why did you pick this program, what are you interested in terms of cultural aspects, something about the work I was doing, and all that. So it was for me, it was a very smooth process. But for people who are starting from scratch in terms of identifying their programs, what they really want to do, I think it's a long process. And I don't think you should expect that if you start 2 months or 3 months before the application deadline, the outcome will not always be what you want. So it really takes some preparation. So these kind of sessions, maybe you have some other sessions on application guidance and all that. I think attending those would be super, super helpful. And also if you have sessions on information on universities, I think students could really benefit from that.
Thank you, Aban. Tom, I would like you now to talk a bit about your experience with the Fulbright or international students being there, and also a bit about the economics and finance masters in the US in general, or a bit about Williams College experience. Over to you.
Okay. There are in the US more than 1,000 schools that give master's degrees. So as Aban says, it can be confusing. And not every school is one you know about or have heard the name of. Most people don't know our school. Everybody knows Harvard. So Umara's got a hard job when it comes to
Very hard.
sorting out placements. But I would like to just sort of underscore what Aban said. Think about what you want to do. There, with more than 1,000 schools giving degrees, there are many ways to accomplish your broad goals. And I guess I should even say this, there may be various sources of funding. Fulbright is a great source of funding, but it is not the only source, depending on what your goals are and what you're trying to do. So in terms of it, for us at Williams in this program, the Fulbrights who are, well, there's an office in New York, the International Institute of Education, that contacts us about Fulbrights normally. And the Fulbrights who have passed through the screening process are qualified academically. So we're usually not worried about that very much. They all have very good grades. And the role of GRE, just to go on that tangent a little bit, it's often to give some weighting to your grades. For us, grades are more important if we know the school. If we don't know the school, then the GRE helps us to put the grades into context. In Aban's case, we knew her school, we knew her professor, and so it was not so hard. But for us, when we see Fulbright applications, it's usually not a difficult thing to determine that they're academically qualified, because our program is specialized on people who want to be in the development process in the public sector. Our difficult decisions are based on fit. So we want people who have worked for some years and in the public sector and sorted through what their longer term professional interests are. And I think in Aban's year, I think we had 5 or 6 Fulbrights from around the world. And I think 5 or 6 people who were funded by the World Bank Graduate Scholarship Program, and then several who were funded by some private foundations. So if you know what you want to do, and your academic background and potentially your work background are very strong as well, there may be several ways to get to where you want to go. So that's part of things. Economics study, graduate study in the US is, it's a global competition. People from all around the world want to study in the US. Most US schools, if the master's degrees are, if you're offered a master's degree, it's often in applied economics, and it's a terminal degree, meaning that's the highest degree the institution may offer, or that part of the institution. We don't have a PhD program in economics. In the US, which is a little different than the UK system, and also different than the system in Pakistan, if you ultimately want a PhD program, most people apply directly to PhD programs, and you get a master's degree after you've completed the coursework portion of the PhD. PhD programs are funded differently. Generally, they're funded by the institutions themselves, and you work as a research assistant for one or more professors or a teaching assistant. And to be a teaching assistant, one of the key demonstrations is English language ability. I think people from Pakistan don't have a problem with that. I think the competition for PhD programs, as I say, is from around the world, including many thousands of applicants from China and from India. Finance. Finance is some people get PhDs in finance, but not that many. Most people those are for people who want to teach, and the same in economics generally, or do research. If you want to work in the private sector in a finance-related job, you may get a master's in finance, and there are maybe several dozen of those programs in the US, but most people get MBAs and take a lot of finance courses. MBAs, I think most of you know this, have a broad array of courses that include accounting and finance, but they also include some things that may not be directly a part of a finance degree, like organizational behavior and marketing. And MBAs are largely debt financed. The whole premise for MBAs is that you do this because your job will be higher paying later. So there are not that many scholarships for MBAs. And I don't know if Fulbright, I think in the past, Fulbright did not fund MBAs, and it may vary by country.
Yeah, I think I'll emphasize here that Fulbright does finance MBA now, but we need 2 years of experience. It's a requirement, and then you can apply for an Fulbright for an MBA degree. Also, Fulbright also supports PhD programs. So if you are thinking of applying for a PhD, you can also consider Fulbright scholarship for going to US.
That's great news. About MBAs, all the leading MBA programs expect you to have worked before you enroll anyway. So this is exactly in line with how the admissions process works in the US for MBAs. And MBAs, where you go often determines where you will get job interviews for the first positions. But it's good that there's some scholarship opportunities. I remember well being I have an MBA from an expensive school, and I remember very well being
Don't be modest, Tom. Don't be modest.
This is one of those schools that we have to work really hard for.
Okay, well, the problem with Harvard is not the teaching, it's good, but it's expensive, and there are not a lot of scholarships because there's a lot of demand for the degree. So yes, the heavy burden of student debt may live with you for some years afterwards. But I think farther out in your career, where you studied matters less and less. What you know matters much more. So again, I want to emphasize that the constraint is often research up front to figure out what other options are, and then the constraint is funding. The constraint is usually not ability. So there may be different ways to find funding. Schools often, even at the master's level, control some scholarship funding they may be able to offer that may be your backup plan if you're not selected for a Fulbright. For example, when Aban had applied here, she actually had been admitted the prior year, and we couldn't fund her. And that was frustrating for us, and probably much more frustrating for her. but there were people from other countries who were good as well. And so we undertook an initiative to try to raise scholarship funding so that we would have that situation far less often, that people couldn't get here due to funding.
Thank you, Tom. I think I'll just ask one more question, Aban, and if there are some good questions, we'll just take them up and then we'll finalize our session. Just any advice for Pakistani students who are interested in applying for Fulbright program?
Yeah, to me, I think for most people, this should be a no-brainer, to be honest. I think it's a really, really good platform if you're interested to study in the United States. And I think it will help you definitely help you with your professional growth, for your career. I think it gives you a leg up. But I think the main difference will be in the person you will become when you come out at the other end. So I think my advice would be to first definitely apply. The other would be, please go into the program with an open mind and with an open heart, so that you can experience new things, broaden your mind, broaden your worldview, be willing to be challenged for your existing opinions, views. I think all of that makes us much better better fits for the globalized world that we live in. So I think this will really prepare you, if you're interested really to become a person who has a broader worldview, who has a richer life. I think this program is really going to be great. And then lastly, I guess, like I said before, Amara, I think please aspire to excel and to do really well in your programs, in your, not just in academically, but socially, making friends. Really try to do well, to take things seriously, and to commit to this, to the Fulbright program and your academic program.
Thank you, Aban. Tom, any last thoughts, or maybe thinking about Fulbright program and how they introduce these amazing students that are on our panel today to your program?
Well, no, we have been a lucky partner of Fulbright for many decades. I will say this, I looked up some numbers, and right now there are fewer students from Pakistan in the US at the master's and PhD level. I think the total number is under 4,000. And then I looked at a nearby country, and I was surprised that the number in Nepal is actually a little higher. Wow. So in a sense, I think Pakistan is underrepresented in US higher education. I guess one final thing, and Aban used the term graduate school. Do people in Pakistan say postgraduate for master's degrees or graduate? That's a question. We have that confusion. So in the US, the terminology is graduate school for master's degrees and PhD. In many countries, the term postgraduate is used, and that will confuse people here. So it's good that you're sharper and know both.
So yeah, I think it's graduate now. There wasn't a 4-year program, undergraduate program in Pakistan before, but many universities are now implementing that program. It was 2 years bachelor's and 2 years master's, and that's why maybe the confusion was coming up. But now it's a 4-year undergraduate programs. Most of the universities or colleges are now practicing that. So I think slowly but surely that will change. But our session is about to end. I want to thank you both for coming and for joining the session. Thank you, Aban. But thank you, Tom, for taking the initiative and being part of the session. We really value. We really enjoyed your comments, and I'm sure our audience has really benefited from them. And thank you, Aban, for sharing your journey. And hopefully we'll have more sessions of this sort. Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thanks very much. Bye,
Thank you.
Tom.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.